Once it gets below 20, it gets really, oh yeah, fast. It dies. Yeah, battery dies very fast.
Show him at 20% and 42%.
It's a combination of many things.
Dante King, Human Resources,
Oops.
and offering with the new.
I can't say climate change because everybody gets all
Yeah,
upset.
KFC
So I'm going to say
because-
weather, right? Can we just agree if I say storms or weather don't have a fit? We know it's climate change, but that gets people all upset.
Okay, so
just
680
just stick with
Sycamore
weather,
Valley.
right? We
That's
can
the
all
one
agree that
I
the weather
want,
has
so-
been odd, right? It has not been the way it's normally been historically. So what's happening is the insurance industry in California, and I say insurance industry, I'm speaking generically about private insurance companies in California, right? So I'll generically put them under the umbrella of the insurance industry or they or something along those lines. I'm really just talking about individual private insurance companies. And by the way, always keep in mind, insurance companies are companies. They're for-profit entities. They're there to make a profit. If they're not making a profit, their shareholders get really pretty upset and they get ousted and that's bad. Either that, and if they're not a publicly traded company, if they're not making money, they go bankrupt. Either way, keep in mind always that insurance companies are not nonprofits. They are for-profit entities. So, important backdrop. So, historically, the insurance industry has looked at the past to try and predict the future. They'll say, okay, well, we can look at this driver, and we know that drivers with certain characteristics like young drivers or drivers that have speeding tickets tend to have more car accidents. Just like they can look at certain areas and they can say, well, homes in certain areas like this or with certain roof types like that tend to be more likely to burn. The industry has a lot of data. They've been doing this literally for a century. So all of this data is what they look at when they're trying to put together rates, right? Rates are the premiums that we're paying in order to get the insurance policies that we're purchasing. And they're not arbitrary, even though I know they feel like it a lot of times, but they're built on a lot of data, big data. Now, all of a sudden, we come in the last few years, and most of that data goes out the window. It no longer becomes applicable. Now, what does that mean? What happened? Let me give you a few examples of some of the things, just a few of the things that have happened that have sort of shaken up the industry as far as why they're having such a hard time predicting losses, and by that coming up with fair rates that work for everybody. First of all, we can look at 2018. There were over $145 billion in fire-related losses alone in 2018. Just as a little trivia, that wipes out the profit for, I believe it was 8 out of 10 insurance companies in the state of California for about 13 years. So all the profit they made in 13 years was gone in 2018.
Oh, that one.
That's one thing. Number two, happens again, 2019, another $80 billion in wildfire-related losses.
Yeah, yes.
Not so good, right? These are not things they're used to seeing. 2020, we're looking at losses of over $12 billion in wildfire damage. Now, just to put things in perspective, if you go historically back 10 years, even 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, the insurance industry will price products assuming there's going to be some type of catastrophe, some type of wildfire, or some type of major loss every 7 years. And now what's happening is they're seeing these massive losses happening almost on an annual basis. So, whoa, right? Big shock to the system. So the property insurance market all of a sudden gets this wave of claims, massive claims. And mind you, this is not just a California thing. This is happening all around the world. But we're focusing in California, but just so you know, all of these things are happening, and now the insurance industry has to stop and say, okay, we have to figure out a way to properly predict losses so we know how to proper price, and so we know that we have enough money to pay claims. That's property insurance. Auto insurance has its own heartache. Well, let's just see. If you and I used to have a little fender bender, that fender bender might have cost, I don't know, $500. Hammer out the dent, something like that. Maybe get a new bumper, put it on, $600-700, done, over with. Now, that same fender bender That bumper has cameras, has sensors, has LiDAR, has all sorts of heavy, sophisticated equipment in it. And it can't just be slapped on by anybody. It has to be put on by a trained professional that knows how to go about putting on these types of complicated electronics. Now, all of a sudden, we're seeing all of the costs that are associated with auto insurance claims going sky high as well, because what used to be, again, an inexpensive, simple fender bender have now turned into an expensive claim that could be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. We've got somebody calling in actually about car insurance, so let's put them on. Walt, I understand you've got a question for us.
Yes, actually I do. I have two cars in my family. One is about a $20,000 Toyota. The other is a $40,000 Toyota. And we're just about ready to pay off both of them. And I currently have full coverage on both vehicles. And what I'm wondering is would you suggest that I drop the level of insurance coverage after I pay off the vehicles? It seems a little much to keep full coverage on there, but what's your opinion?
Sure, it's a great question. First, I always like to dig in a little bit whenever I hear full coverage. What is full coverage? By the way, there is no specific definition. There are so many different types of car insurance coverage types that you can get. But I'm going to assume for the sake of this discussion, you're talking about you have physical damage coverage for your vehicles. That's what you mean by full coverage. So the question is, you're paying off the cars, so now they are going from being a debt that you're paying off to being an asset, something that you actually own and has value, right? You could sell it. Now, depending on the value, and you're saying $20,000, $40,000 or so, let's just say that you're looking at about $50,000 between the two. If you're looking at sales, tax, and all those other things, you've got about $50,000 in value right now in these two vehicles. So my knee jerk is, well, that's an asset you want to protect. What if one of them gets in a car accident? What if one of them gets stolen? What if one of them, something happens to them, right? You would protect that. Just like when you put money in the bank, you want to be sure that you're with a bank that has the FDIC looking out, right, to be sure your money's protected. Insurance, physical damage on your vehicle is sort of like that. You are protecting that investment. Having said that, I don't always tell people that, keep coverage on it no matter what, because there is a point of diminishing returns where you're going to be paying the value of what the car is in a few years, right? And at that point you say, you know what, it's just not worth it anymore. But on cars that have significant value like that, I would certainly think hard before I would remove coverage to pay for them in the event that there's a bad accident or there's a fire and it burns or it's stolen or something like that. If you're looking to save money, you can always do one of two things. You can go with a significantly higher deductible, right? That's a great way to go and save some money. Or some insurance companies will give you the option to simply have fire and theft as a standalone coverage, right? So you'll have that versus just having, damage for all covered on the vehicle. You can just have fire and theft to have that be sort of your safety net in the event that there's a claim. So that's my 2 cents. And I would look at it as you're shifting a debt to an asset. Do you want to protect that asset now? And if you do, how much? How much is it worth it for you to protect that? And then you have to do some math, and it's really more of a personal decision at the end of the day, because everyone has their own risk tolerance, right? Everyone has their what could I stand to lose before I would have an absolute fit, right? Before I would really kick myself. So I want to get back. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's absolutely great. That's very informative, and I appreciate your help on that.
Okay, good deal. And then, again, the most important thing is find out what the cost is before you make a decision, and sleep on it, because you don't know. It might turn out that it's less expensive than you think, and it's kind of a no-brainer. You figure, yeah, I'm just gonna keep the coverage because I'll raise the deductible up to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and that way I know if there's something bad that happens to the car, it's totaled or something. Okay, I won't get that much of the value, but I'll still get the rest of it.
Fabulous. Thank you for taking my call.
You got it. All right. Well, that was Walt with his auto question, and I think before I jump back in and continue with my chat about auto insurance and why the rates have gone up, we will take we'll take a quick break, and then when we come back, we have another caller.
In a tough California insurance market, you need expert guidance. Trust Sussman Insurance Agency with a legacy of understanding complex coverage needs. Call 877-411-5200 or visit SussmanInsurance.com. Treating clients like family for 2 generations.
California's insurance market can be challenging, but Sussman Insurance Agency knows the way. Trusted for 2 generations in home, auto, and personal insurance. Call us at 877-411-5200 or visit SussmanInsurance.com. We'll help you navigate with confidence.
Okay, dokie. Hello. We're back. That wasn't such a long break now, was it? I hardly had time to have a sip of my espresso. I think we have another call in. Is that Bob, did I hear?
You heard correct.
All right, Bob, tell us what you got. What can we do for you today on Insurance Hour?
With regards to the rising insurance rates, people want their car and home, but I'll concentrate on car. What is being done, or what kind of stopgaps do the insurance companies have for the rate evasion when it comes to a young driver in the household? For example, you've got mom and dad and a 15-year-old in the household. A year and a half goes by, and 15-year-old's now driving. Is the insurance company doing some kind of follow-up? Is it the agency that has to follow up? Is it technically the insured that has to report it in? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and I get this frequently. Usually it's the other way. Do I have to tell you that my kid's turning 16 and going to start driving? And I always laugh, thinking, well, yeah, you want them to have insurance. Here's the general rule of thumb, and it does differ between insurance companies in general. Some companies have what's called a named driver policy. You are listed on the policy, you have coverage under the policy, that's it, mic drop. Other companies have what's called more of a family auto policy, where people in the household have coverage. Now, that does not mean that the intent of that is, hey, your kids turn 16 and just let them start driving, they're covered. Because, let's face it, the insurance company is going to, at some point, when they realize that there's been a driver in the household, they're going to want to have them added onto the policy so that they can collect appropriate premium for it. And you don't want to have a claim in that interim, right? You don't want any surprises. I always tell people, you never want to give an insurance company a good excuse to deny a claim. And having your kid turn 16 and get a driver's license, and you don't tell anybody about it, that's giving them a pretty good excuse. As far as who's responsible for that, some insurance companies will ask when you're actually filling out an application for the age of any children in the household. And they'll keep track. You might have a 4-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or 12, whatever it might be. And you'll get a notification when they're turning 16 from the insurance company. Some carriers will simply tell you, keep in mind, if you don't ask them, they're not covered. I would say the only part of that equation that I would say is not responsible would be an agent or a broker, because they don't really know who's in the household or who's not, who might have moved in, who might have moved out. Is someone in college? Has someone gotten married? Did somebody adopt? I mean, there are so many moving parts. So I would say the responsibility falls obviously to the insured at the end of the day, because they're the ones that want to have the protection. So you want to have the protection, you have to tell the insurance company what it is that you want to have protected.
Well, when you ask you like this, let's put it to you like this: what about nowadays? You hear kids that are 18 and still not driving. For some reason, a lot of kids have decided, hey, I'm not going to go get my license when I turn 16. I mean, when I was 16, I couldn't wait. I was there the day I turned 16. I'm at the DMV, trying to get my license. Nowadays, with Uber and Lyft, ride shares, you have a lot of kids that are not driving until they're 18. So, at that point in time, how do the parents prove that the kid's not driving? And not increasing their rate? And the other way that it is to look at it is with technology nowadays, insurance companies have these fantastic programs like these deals where you plug a little monitor or reader into your car, and they just tell you how fast you're going, how much you're driving, how you're braking, acceleration, deceleration, all kinds of good stuff. Do they use that to somehow say, well, wait a minute, here's mom and dad going to work or not going to work or in the house, and all of a sudden the cars get driven around 3 o'clock or 8 o'clock when school gets in and school gets out. You know what I mean? Are they using
I
that
hear
type
you.
of
I hear
technology?
you. You're touching on some great stuff. What you're describing is called telematics, and that's where information on the vehicle is in some way utilized for underwriting. And this is allowed state by state. Some states allow it, some states don't for privacy reasons. And for this very reason, right? Do you want to all of a sudden get a call from your insurance company that says, hey, you know what? We see a change in your driving pattern. It used to just be Monday through Friday, and now all of a sudden you're going out Friday and Saturday night. Is there a kid in the house? It's a privacy issue. So you're going to see a lot of states that already don't allow that type of telematics. Also keep in mind that a lot of newer cars keep that information already. Tesla, for example, I read, has part of their system to track them. You can actually get a driving score from your Tesla to tell you how you're doing. And of course, do you think they just want to take that valuable data and just hand it over to the insurance companies for free? Clearly not. That's going to be a revenue source in the places where it's available, where the insurance companies will say, hey, we'll pay for that data because we can really utilize that to try and come up with the right rate for the right exposure. And as far as when kids turn 18, it's funny you say that because I was the same way, right? I mean, I was counting the seconds until I could get my permit and counting the seconds until I could get my license. And I've seen the same thing you have. We sound old saying this generation, but you know, these days, I mean, I know my niece and nephew, I think one of them didn't get their license until they were 18, and the other was like 17, maybe even closer to 19. And for me, it was inconceivable that they would do that, but they did. Now, what will happen is, again, if we go under the auspice that the insurance carriers are not in some way being sneaky, right? They're not tracking it, or they don't have their dates of birth on file to ask, then you don't have to prove anything. If they're not driving, they're not driving. You have nothing to worry about. You're never charged for a driver that's not driving, especially a driver that doesn't have a driver's license, right? So even if the carrier said, hey, we see that you have an 18-year-old or 17-year-old living in a household, right, for however they figure it out, and your response would be, okay, they're unlicensed, and then you're done. So it really is a combination of, you know, do we want to be able to give up some of this privacy, some of this detail about how we're driving to save money? It allows us to get a better rate, but at the same time, to your point, it does definitely kind of give you the heebie-jeebies, right? Because you wouldn't want to get that phone call that says, hey, what were you doing over at 2 in the morning? It looks like you weren't at home there, you know? I mean, you can imagine the dystopian world we could live in, right? If all of your movements are tracked, well, as if they're not, but in a way that's going to affect your insurance premium. Yeah, they are, but they're being heavily regulated as far as what they can be utilized for when it comes to things like insurance, at least.
Yeah, well, you know, the one way they get you is they give you that 5% discount or whatever they might give you to put this in your car. And, you know, that once you put it in your car, you're signing some kind of small print that says we have the right to use this information as necessary. And, you know, and do it then. Now, it's all different. You know, I want to give you a little background. I was in the insurance, you know, industry for a long time, so I've seen some of this happen. Yeah, I see some of this happen in the past. But you know, what normally happened back then is if you had a policyholder with a decent track record with the insurance company, their kid would have an accident. He's 17. He's been on the, he hasn't been on the policies for a year. Normally they wouldn't cover it. You'd have to go through the proper channels. But what they would do is reduce coverage down to the state minimum, and which could be a scary thing as well, because then you're exposing yourself to anything above and beyond the state minimum. And it's about hitting a Tesla. The kid's out driving dad's pickup truck.
Basically uninsured.
Yeah, you basically, that $10,000 in coverage is gone on a bumper, type of thing. So I was just curious because I think it's probably one of the the attitude that like, well, I told them they had a kid in the house and they haven't said anything, so I'm going to keep on covering them or keep letting them drive.